I wore red that night. Not because I wanted attention but because I wanted his. Only he wasn't supposed to know me. Not tonight. We'd been married for 7 years. Comfortable, safe, known. Our kisses had softened into habits. Our touches came with grocery lists. But somewhere along the line I started missing the ache. The hunger. That dizzy thrill of not knowing what would happen next. So we made a pact. One night, we'd go to a bar. And pretend we were strangers. No rings. No history. Just glances across a crowded room. I arrived first, slid into a high-back stool. Ordered something sharp with a twist of lime. The ice clinked against the glass like a countdown. And then I saw him. God. Even now, even after all these years, his presence hit me like a memory I wasn't ready to feel. He looked different, not in any obvious way. But there was something about his posture. Looser. Larger. Like he'd stepped out of the role of my husband and into something far more dangerous. He didn't come to me right away. He watched. I could feel his eyes on the bare line of my shoulder, the slow lift of my glass, the way I crossed my legs like I wasn't thinking of him at all. But I was. And when he finally approached, slow, confident, a slight smirk at the corner of his lips, my heart thudded like it didn't recognize him. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice lower, rougher. I met his eyes. Didn't smile. Just let the pause stretch between us until it started to hum. "That depends," I said, my voice a little breathless. "Are you the kind of man who makes trouble?" He leaned in, his breath brushing my cheek like it knew a secret. "I guess we'll find out." And just like that, we were two strangers at a bar. But already I could feel the pull. The danger wasn't that I might fall for someone new. It was that I might fall for him all over again. And this time I wasn't sure who he'd be when I did. He sat down beside me like he didn't already know how my body fit against his in bed. Like we hadn't whispered secrets into each other's skin in the quiet hours before dawn. But tonight I was just a woman in red. And he was the kind of man who didn't ask what I did for a living. Just what I wanted to drink. "I like a woman who knows what she wants," he said, letting his fingers trail the rim of his glass, not looking at me, but close enough I could feel the electricity buzz between us. I smiled. "Slow. Dangerous. I like a man who doesn't pretend to know me." He laughed, low and warm, like he wasn't my husband but someone with teeth behind the charm. And God, he played it well. Too well. Because when the bartender asked, "You two together?" he didn't even glance my way. "No," he said easily. "Not yet." My stomach flipped. And not just from the game. There was something about seeing him like this. Outside the safety of our rituals, our couch cushions, our weekend routines. This man wasn't folding laundry with me. He was watching me like I was a risk. And I realized I missed being a risk. We talk like people trying to impress. Small lies, playful half-truths. He told me he traveled too much, drank too little. I told him I liked older men with kind eyes and complicated intentions. But then it shifted. Another woman passed by. Tall. Confident. She brushed her hand over his shoulder as she laughed at something behind us. And he laughed back. That sound, it cracked something in me. It was his laugh. But it wasn't mine. And for a second I wasn't sure if he was still pretending. Or if he was remembering how it felt to be wanted by someone else. I took a breath. Tried to swallow the sudden bitterness. This was my idea. But I hadn't expected to feel replaced. Even for a moment. So I leaned in, close enough to touch the inside of his wrist with my fingertips. "You seem like the kind of man who's easily distracted," I whispered. He turned to me, his eyes darker now. "And you seem like the kind of woman who knows exactly when to pull someone back in." My pulse jumped. The line between us had vanished. And the game? It was no longer safe. We moved to a booth in the back, somewhere darker, quieter, where voices lowered and knees brushed beneath the table without apology. I let him order for me. And when the drinks came, he lifted his glass to mine like it was a first date. A beginning. Not the middle of a love story with stains and scars. "To strangers," he said. I clinked my glass gently against his. "To forgetting." He arched a brow. "Forgetting what?" I smiled without answering, because I wasn't sure if I meant forgetting the marriage, or forgetting how we'd gotten so far from this version of ourselves. The silence between us pulsed, curious, charged. He watched me in that way he used to before bills and alarms and bedtime routines. I tilted my head. What are you thinking? He took a sip, eyes still on me. I'm thinking. If I kissed you right now, I'd ruin it. That made me go still. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. Too much. There was something dizzying about being near him like this. No labels, no promises. Just breath and hunger and the aching question of what if. But there was also something dangerous about how far he was willing to take it. Because I wasn't sure if this was still our game, or if it was starting to become his. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, and I could smell the soft warmth of whiskey on his breath. Tell me something you've never told your husband, he said. I froze. That was the moment it stopped feeling like flirting, because I could lie. I could play along. But instead, I said the one thing I'd never planned to admit. Sometimes, I miss being wanted. He didn't flinch. He just nodded slow. And then, me too. The air between us snapped. We weren't pretending anymore. We were confessing. And somehow that felt more intimate than anything we'd done in years. His hand rested on the table, palm open, fingers still. Like he wanted me to take it. Like he knew I wouldn't. Not yet. The air between us thickened with unsaid things. Not just lust, but years. Years of almosts, of brushing past each other in the hallway, of kisses that were quick, distracted, meant for goodbye, not arrival. Now his gaze dropped to my mouth. Slowly. And I felt the heat rise in my chest like it had nowhere else to go. I shifted in the booth. My leg brushed his under the table. He didn't move. Didn't even blink. That tiny contact. Skin against fabric, pressure against pressure was nothing. And it was everything. He leaned in again, voice low. You know, if I met you like this, I want to ruin your whole week. My breath caught. Because that was not something my husband would say. But it was something this version of him, the stranger with familiar eyes, might whisper into a woman's ear just before she made a mistake she couldn't take back. You talk like a man with nothing to lose, I said, throat tight. He smiled. That's the beauty of being strangers, isn't it? The way he looked at me then, I felt it everywhere. In my stomach. In my ribs. In the place just beneath my skin that still remembered how it felt to be craved. But there was more than heat rising in me now. There was something sharp. Jealousy? Of what? Of who? Of the women he might have looked at like this when I wasn't watching? Or the version of me he seemed to want now because she wasn't tied to laundry or loyalty? I let my hand drift across the table, grazing his knuckles. And I saw it, the way his breath hitched. The way he wasn't immune either. But I didn't hold his hand. Not yet. Instead, I pulled back slowly, deliberately. And I said, careful. You don't know what I'm capable of. He leaned closer. A dare in his eyes. Then show me. That's when I realized this game we started? We'd both forgotten who was playing who. We stepped out of the bar just after midnight. The city air was warm and humming. The kind of night that stretched time into something slower, softer. He didn't ask where I lived. Didn't offer to walk me to my car. He just stood beside me on the sidewalk like we were both waiting for something to break. You're not going to invite me up? He asked, voice low, eyes unreadable. I tilted my head, playing the role even though my heart was racing in my chest like it had its own secret agenda. That depends, I said. Are you the kind of man who waits to be invited? He took a step closer. The kind of step that changes everything. No, he said. I'm the kind who follows. His hand touched the small of my back, light, careful. Like he remembered the curve of it but was relearning how it felt to claim it. And just like that, my body betrayed me. My breath shortened. My spine straightened. Every nerve in me turned toward him like it was its own compass. But we weren't at home. We weren't safe. We were two people who looked like strangers in the middle of a city that didn't know our names. And I felt the edge of that danger press against my skin like heat under fabric. He leaned close, his mouth almost at my ear. You feel it too, don't you? His voice was a whisper, but it made everything in me tighten. I nodded. Barely. And then, as if gravity itself made the choice for us, we started walking together, quiet, side by side. Not toward our house. Not toward the familiar. But toward a hotel just 3 blocks away. Each step felt heavier than the last. Because we weren't cheating. And yet somehow we were. Not with other people. With versions of ourselves we hadn't touched in years. Inside the elevator, the silence was deafening. His hand brushed mine. I didn't pull away. When the doors closed, I turned to him, my back against the mirrored wall. And for the first time all night, I dropped the mask. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered. "Even if it's you." His expression softened, but his body stayed close. "You're not doing this with me," he said. "You're doing it with the man you forgot I could be." And just like that, I didn't feel like his wife anymore. I felt like someone he was about to ruin. The hotel room door clicked shut behind us, and suddenly the silence felt too loud. He stood near the window, backlit by city lights, shoulders broad, shirt slightly wrinkled, jaw tense. He looked like a man who just brought home a woman he wanted to undress slowly, deliberately, painfully. But I was his wife, and I didn't know whether to cry or let him touch me. "I almost forgot," I said quietly, "what it's like to be wanted by you." He turned. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just present. Completely. And it broke something open in me. "Do you remember," I said, "when I used to catch you watching me like this, like your whole body was already touching me, even when you hadn't moved?" He walked toward me slowly, like every step was permission. "I never stopped," he murmured. "You just stopped looking." That hit me hard. Too hard. I turned away. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror above the desk. Flushed cheeks. Bare shoulders. Hunger where guilt used to live. He came up behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, but not touching me yet. His voice was low, careful. "Say stop." "I will." I didn't. 'Cause I couldn't. Not when my entire body was leaning back into him like it remembered what surrender used to feel like. His breath met the curve of my neck. Not his lips. Not yet. Just breath. Warm. Alive. Teasing. And that alone made my eyes close. When he finally let his hands find my waist, fingertips barely there, I exhaled like I'd been holding that breath for years. "Who are we right now?" I whispered. He answered against my skin. "Whoever we need to be." To remember how this started. And the worst part? It worked. I didn't feel married. I didn't feel safe. I felt like I was about to do something irreversible, with the man I swore I'd never lose. His hands moved like they weren't allowed to. Slow. Searching. Worshipful. He didn't kiss me right away. He just let his fingers skim the bare skin between my shoulder blades, as if learning me from scratch. As if memory wasn't enough, he needed proof. We were inches apart and still he didn't touch my lips. It drove me mad. Made me ache. Because it meant this wasn't just about desire, it was about control. About making me need it first. "I don't know you," I breathed, heart pounding, skin alive. He smiled just barely. "I'm counting on that." I turned to face him, needing to see his eyes. Needing to be sure this wasn't just a fantasy built on 7 years of fading sparks. But when I looked up, he wasn't my husband. He was a man unafraid to devour me. His thumb brushed my bottom lip. And I trembled just slightly. Because it wasn't about the touch, it was about the restraint. He could have kissed me then. But he didn't. He waited. Waited until my breath caught, my eyes dropped, my hand gripped the edge of his jacket like it could anchor me. And then he leaned in. But not to kiss. Just to whisper. "Tell me your name." I blinked. Shaken. "What?" He stepped back half a breath. Just enough to make the space between us unbearable. "We're strangers, remember?" he said. "I don't kiss a woman until I know her name." The game. God, he was still playing it. And yet, the tension between us felt dangerously real now. Like we'd stepped off the edge of something we couldn't name. So I said it. Soft. Hesitant. Like I wasn't sure if I wanted to be her again. "My name is Lily." He smiled like he'd been waiting years to hear it. "Well, Lily," he said, stepping forward, his hand sliding behind my neck. "I'm Daniel." And then finally he kissed me. Not like a husband. Not like a promise. But like a man who had just met the woman he'd been dreaming about his entire life. That kiss didn't belong in our marriage. It belonged in a story. In a hotel room where names were borrowed and hearts were reckless. Where I was Lily. And he was Daniel. And nothing tied us together except the gravity pulling us into each other. It started slow. Mouths barely brushing. A pause between breaths so fragile, so full. I thought it might shatter if I even blinked. And then it deepened. Like the moment we kissed, the past loosened its grip on us. No more laundry. No arguments over who forgot to lock the back door. No lists or to-dos or soft apologies for falling asleep too early. Just us. Not as husband and wife, but as something far more dangerous. Two people on the edge of something they shouldn't survive. Every touch that followed felt stolen. Not because we were cheating, but because we'd forgotten how rare it was to be this hungry for someone you already had. Clothes shifted. Breath tangled. But it was never about how far we went. It was about how close we got. He touched me like he missed me. Like I'd been gone, even when I'd been beside him all along. And I let him. Because I missed myself too. When it was over, we didn't speak. We just lay there. Our bodies tangled in silence, the air still hot with everything we couldn't say. And then he laughed. Quiet. Warm. That laugh I used to fall asleep to when everything still felt new. What? I whispered. He turned to me, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. You know what the worst part is, he said. I shook my head. I think I'm going to fall in love with you. I smiled, small and aching. Too late. We left the hotel an hour later. Not holding hands. Not walking close. But inside we were different. We had betrayed nothing. And yet somehow everything had changed. Because the most intimate thing we ever did was pretend we had never met. Sometimes to find each other again, you have to forget everything you were supposed to be.